At this point, we've actually had several leaks for Starfield that are basically confirmed to be true. Some of these being explicitly confirmed by the recent gameplay or even insiders, and some others that just look really interesting and like they definitely could have some promise. And the point of this video is, out of the cesspool of leaks that are out there, I'm only focusing on ones that are definitely true or probably true. And some of these get pretty insane. Starfield may go down as one of the most leaked Bethesda Game Studios games ever. And I know, the big question for a lot of you is, when is Starfield coming out? You guys want the opportunity to explore this galaxy as soon as possible. But you don't have to wait, you could just get a galaxy right now. Thanks to today's video sponsor with Galaxy Lamps. The Galaxy Projector is powerful. It can transform entire rooms with ease, or even in my case, just illuminate my entire apartment. This will feature full-on app integration. You could choose to have a heavy starlight in your background, or literally any color you want, as it does feature full-on RGB support. As well as you could turn the lights down if you're after some mood lighting, or at max brightness you could truly light up a room. Or even just wake up feeling like you are actually in outer space, as you could set up timers and schedules also. And if you want to feel like you're truly living in the future, you can set your Galaxy Projector up with Amazon Alexa or Google Assistant, but for those of you living in the past, you don't actually have to use an app at all. And there's even a built-in 3-stand system that lets you control how exactly the light is directed. And you are actually in luck. Since you watched this video, you can get 15% off your Galaxy Projector with code JuiceHead, or by just clicking my link in the video description. Thanks again to Galaxy Lamps for sponsoring this video. One of the first major leaks we got around Starfield are of course the leaked images. We basically always knew these would be true. So many of these ended up coming out, about 100 leaked in total, but not all of them ended up getting leaked publicly. And just the level of detail, how much is going on, it'd be incredibly difficult to fake these, but they've been confirmed time and time again as we actually got the gameplay and some of the other teaser trailers. The images do give us a bit of an interesting insight to the development and even some of the other features of Starfield though. They are largely from a 2018 to 2019 build of the game, and all of these images are actually taken at the Crete world base. At least that was the title of these images. That's pretty interesting because of course Crete is the first moon base we see during that initial Starfield gameplay. So it seems like this moon base or this world has actually been around for about 4 years now, if not longer. These structural shots are likely base building, as we now know that base building is going to be a pretty extensive part of Starfield overall. So you can see some of the different objects you'll be able to play with and the customization of putting them all together in different configurations. And it does look like there'll be quite a wide array of things, even things like grav locks for us to place down and customize. We also see Blackfleet, or at least that was what the ship image was titled. We have several images of the same or very familiar looking ship. Early on it was speculated that Blackfleet would actually be our own ship when these images did leak, but of course we know our own ship is Frontier, not Blackfleet, and Blackfleet was also seen in this trailer. During that scene where the ship comes landing down on the Crete moon base, that is actually Blackfleet, or perhaps it gets a different name by the time Starfield releases, but it seems like this ship is going to be heavily associated with the Crimson Fleet pirates. So funny enough, a lot of the things actually shown off in these leaked images were actually displayed during the short snippets of gameplay we got. These incredibly high detail images of Starfield armors are oftentimes associated with this leak, but it's actually a completely separate thing. This just being a fan-made recreation of armors from concept art and trailers from somebody who is trying to get a job at Bethesda. Despite that, they are still some of the highest quality looks we have at many of these armors and incredibly well represented, leading some people to think this was actually kind of a weird or interesting leak in its own right. And that's not the only crazy fan theory. When these pictures started coming out over time, there was a bunch of conspiracies that it was a rogue employee or even a controlled leak by Bethesda. Some of the pictures still haven't even leaked, but the reality is actually a lot simpler and in some ways a lot funnier. I was first sent these images early in 2020, and the way these images of Starfield leaked to the public is Google Images. Yeah, no, literally, there's just one very special fan who was Googling about Starfield. He went to the images section and found that one employee had accidentally left one of his folders public when it should have been private. As a result, these were getting cached by Google, and you could find a bunch of Starfield images on Google Images. Quickly thereafter, this was taken down, but the images were already saved, and actually for a while, the person to find these just wasn't even sure if they actually were Starfield or not. Because would you believe you actually just found a bunch of leaked pictures of Starfield Starfield before we saw anything of the game on Google Images of all places. But beyond that, the second major leak comes from 4chan, and this one is technically unconfirmed, but one of the most interesting of the bunch. A user made several posts from 2018 to 2021 and got quite a few interesting and very specific details correct on Starfield. They mentioned how there'd be an overview option in the shipbuilding mode, animated ladders would be a feature of the game, and even how spaceflight was an early addition to the game. This being said, right after Fallout 76 released, where a lot of people didn't think Bethesda could even make a regular game, let alone one with flying spaceships. And naturally, all of this did end up being true, most of it just getting confirmed by the recent gameplay, which makes it interesting what else this user did predict or potentially leak. I just made a full video on this, but the kind of rundown of what's interesting here. Reportedly, NPCs will play a pretty major role in Starfield. They'll be able to man certain aspects of our ship, like controlling some of the weapon systems. NPCs will be able to follow us onto planets, almost like companions, and even build up settlements on their own, like sim settlements for Fallout 4. So it seems like these miscellaneous NPCs, these settlers that we know, will actually have a much larger role in Starfield. But even further, the game will have things like augmentations, brain implants being a thing, and there will even be some mega satellites to explore. And although those were two of the big leaks that did surface that definitely had a healthy amount of very interesting things to dive into, there's a bunch of just weird miscellaneous leaks in the middle of Starfield that also all seem to be true, or at least pretty plausible. One day, a user gained access to the Bethesda Content Delivery Network and posted this Starfield Breaker background, or at least that was what the image was titled. This was just before that teaser trailer from E3 2021 was released, so we didn't really know much of anything about the game. And this image seemed to be legit. It showed off this watch that, of course, we get very prominently in the gameplay and even will be with the collector's edition, or it's at least suspected it'll be included with the collector's edition of Starfield. We get some spaceships that we could also see in some of the concept art that released after this, and even this mysterious city that is actually in the cover art for the game, and we still don't really know much about it. And this was just one of those random leaks that was posted just before E3 2021 of an image that didn't really reveal a ton, but did seem to be legit, and whatever it was, Bethesda obviously never used it publicly. Perhaps once it leaked, they moved on to using something else. You could definitely see how this could fit in with some of the other concept art that has been shared. That same year, shortly thereafter, the Washington Post accidentally leaked the entire Starfield reveal teaser early, this being on the day of E3, several hours before it officially went live. Not really the most major leak, but definitely unfortunate for Bethesda, and I haven't forgotten, if I ever have a massive game company and I'm going to give the Washington Post a preview, I'm not going to do that anymore because of this leak. And one of the only major leaks we have around the release date for Starfield came from Xbox itself, of all places, as we saw in a Game Pass advertisement that mentioned Starfield is expected to come in early 2023, which to me implies a release in January, February, or March 2023, where technically all we know from Bethesda and Xbox officially is that Starfield will come before June 12th, 2023. A January, February, or March release date would definitely be a decent chunk earlier, several months earlier than I'm personally expecting the game at the very least. We don't really know if this one is true. The Microsoft Store has leaked things legitimately in the past, but would the Microsoft Store know this far in advance the release date of Starfield? Maybe it really is coming in the first quarter of 2023, but at least as of right now, we don't know much, and it's just kind of this odd thing that popped up a couple of months ago. The other main leaker around Starfield has been none other than Jason Schreier himself, this being the person to leak Fallout 4's entire script, the fact that Fallout 76 would have multiplayer, and even how Starfield wouldn't come out in 2021. That last bit about Starfield was actually done by calling out another YouTuber who said he heard Starfield was pretty much done in September of 2020, which yeah, it doesn't seem like that's true. But earlier this year, Jason Schreier gave us yet another interesting leak about Starfield. He reportedly heard how some Bethesda devs were extremely worried about committing to an 11/11/22 date based on the progress they've made so far with Starfield, and it being the next Cyberpunk was the term being floated around by those developers, which obviously would be pretty bad. It seems like Bethesda definitely wants Starfield to be a win, or almost needs it to be a win following Fallout 76. And this is definitely not the only leak we've heard about Starfield having issues with development. Heavy008 is perhaps the most hilarious of all of these leakers. He he was a Bethesda Game Studios dev who recently left the company and was posting on the forum Reset Era. He confirmed all kinds of things, like how Starfield would have spaceflight, which we didn't know officially at the time. Of course, that was a pretty big reveal at Naughty 3 this year. How Spy Team was reportedly this pet project for Todd Howard being worked on at Bethesda, but it has stopped production. And most relevant here, how this dev felt that the engine is a piece of crap, Starfield is getting weekly playtests since the start of 2022, and that shooting feels alright, but flying is terrible and just not fun, at least according to this particular developer. And then he went on to get in a bunch of arguments on this forum with a bunch of other users about how he wasn't actually breaking his NDA, and it was obvious that a space game would have spaceflight. Which, yeah, in hindsight it was kind of obvious, but technically it was never confirmed, at least not officially. Shortly thereafter, he did actually delete his entire account and all of his posts on this. And the mod on Reset Era, who actually verified Heavy's identity, likely saw gameplay in the process of verifying Heavy's identity, also actually shared some details about what he thought about what he saw on Starfield, saying how things look good standing still but felt a bit janky in motion, this likely referring to spaceflight, which all of this is pretty interesting to me. The biggest criticism from these two are around how ship flying felt and looked, but how the gunplay was actually pretty good, and even one of the earlier leakers, that 4chan leaker, mentioned how id was helping with the gunplay and it felt pretty good. Meanwhile, the reaction to the gameplay reveal publicly from fans was pretty much the opposite, with the gunplay looking pretty bad, but ship flight not getting many criticisms. Who's right, who's wrong, we don't really know, but I think one of the big takeaways is Starfield definitely needed more time, and it's getting more time. That was the point of this delay. Now, whether or not that means it's coming in early 2023 or in the middle of 2023, we don't really know, but I'm definitely crossing my fingers that that leak was right, because I would love to play this game sooner rather than later, but of course when it's actually ready to be played. So to recap, Starfield is a game set in space, and it has had a surprising amount of content get leaked around it from a wide array of hilarious and interesting sources. Angry developers on forums, Google Images, and of course 4chan. It's going to be hard to top Fallout 4's entire script getting leaked in terms of just the sheer craziness of it, but Starfield still has a year, and it definitely seems like holistically it could end up taking the title of most leaked Bethesda game. And if you want one more out there leaker prediction for Starfield, I think in the future, after release, it'll get paid mods. With that said, hopefully you guys found this one informative. It was definitely interesting to look back at all of these leaks that do seem to have a lot of legitimacy, at least the most legitimate leaks we've had thus far for this game, among a flood of fake ones. As always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, but with that, I hope to see you all next time. Later.